The Citadel Station hung like a jeweled brooch against the velvet of space, its countless lights glimmering with the promise of galactic unity. Within its ornate council chamber, a cathedral-like space of soaring arches and polished alien woods, sat representatives of over 300 sentient species, their collective attention focused on the chamber's center, where a single human stood, tugging nervously at his collar. Ambassador Jake Martinez cleared his throat, feeling distinctly average in a room full of extraordinary beings. Towering insectoids clicked mandibles in quiet conversation with amorphous light beings. Reptilian dignitaries lounged on heated perches, their scales shimmering under the chamber's ambient glow. Jake was the only human present, and despite humanity's celebrated entrance into the galactic community, he felt like a child at an adult's table. "Is my tie straight?" he thought absently, hands fidgeting with the knot. "I should have had the replicator press my jacket again. And why did I have the spicy breakfast option? What if I need to burp during my address?" Across the chamber, Vexthera observed the human with clinical detachment. At 8 feet tall, with obsidian skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, she cut an imposing figure even among the council's exotic membership. 4 iridescent eyes blinked in sequence as she studied the human specimen. As the council's premier telepath and chief interrogator, Vexthera had probed the minds of everything from gas cloud intelligences to sentient crystal matrices. In 342 standard years, she had never failed to extract the information required. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," intoned High Counselor Tavrarik, his reptilian voice echoing through the chamber. "Before we proceed with Earth's petition for full membership, protocol demands a thorough assessment. Ambassador Martinez has volunteered for a standard telepathic evaluation." Jake's eyes widened slightly. Volunteered was a generous interpretation. His briefing had mentioned this possibility as a formality rarely invoked, but here they were. He nodded agreeably while his inner monologue raced. "Oh God, oh God. They're going to see I have no idea what I'm doing. They'll see I still don't know how to pronounce Tavrarik's name properly. Is it emphasis on the first syllable or the second? They're going to find out I spent 20 minutes this morning trying to decide between the blue tie and the burgundy one." "Ambassador," Tavrarik continued, gesturing toward Vexthera, "our chief interrogator will perform a standard surface scan. This is merely to assess Earth's psychic defenses and ensure there are no hidden concerns." "Of course," Jake said with a smile that he hoped conveyed diplomatic confidence rather than mounting panic. Earth has nothing to hide, except perhaps the collection of cat videos he'd been watching instead of reviewing Agricultural Treaty subsection 7b last night. Vexthera glided forward, her movements liquid and precise. The chamber fell silent as she approached Jake. This was routine, a formality she had performed thousands of times. New species always required verification before full council privileges could be granted. She would skim the surface thoughts, verify the absence of deception or hidden agendas, and be done within moments. "I will now initiate contact," she announced, her voice like silk over steel. "Please remain still, Ambassador." Jake nodded, trying to think official, diplomatic thoughts, trade agreements, cultural exchange initiatives, the potential for shared technological development. Vexthera's long, elegant fingers extended toward the human's shoulder. The moment her hand made contact with Jake's suit jacket, the universe shifted. Instead of the organized streams of diplomatic consciousness she expected, Vexthera was hit by a tsunami of disconnected thoughts. "Wonder if they have coffee here or just that purple stuff. Did I turn off the bathroom light in my quarters? What if hot dogs are sandwiches? Oh God, she's touching me. Act normal, act normal. That alien looks like my third-grade teacher, Mrs. Abernathy. Trade Agreement Section 12 needs revision, but what if... I should call Mom when I get back. Wonder if aliens have something like IKEA." Vexthera blinked rapidly, momentarily disoriented. This wasn't the disciplined stream of a diplomat. It was chaos. Yet, among the jumble, she could detect no malice, no deception, just an overwhelming cascade of trivial concerns interspersed with genuine diplomatic intentions. "Ambassador," she said coolly, maintaining contact. "Please focus your thoughts on the matter at hand." "Oh, yes, of course," Jake said aloud, unaware of the telepathic mayhem. "I'm completely focused." His mind, however, responded differently. "Focus, focus. Don't think about embarrassing things." "Oh no, now I'm just thinking about embarrassing things. That time in 6th grade when I wet my pants during the science fair. Stop thinking about that. Earth's position on dilithium mining rights is that we support sustainable—" My hotel room AC is making that weird rattling sound. "Focus on the treaty, Jake. Article 7, subsection B clearly states that agricultural—" "Wonder if aliens have sports? Space basketball?" Vexthera's composed expression faltered. The sheer volume of simultaneous thoughts was unlike anything she had encountered. Most species thought in linear progressions, or at most, dual tracks for complex thinkers. This human's mind was running dozens of concurrent streams, jumping between topics with no apparent pattern or hierarchy. Around the council chamber, other telepathically sensitive species began to shift uncomfortably. Something unusual was happening. The Medusan delegate's tentacles curled inward, defensively. A Volfoid representative's fur stood on end. Jake, oblivious to the growing psychic disturbance, maintained his diplomatic smile while continuing his mental gymnastics. Should have reviewed that xenobiology report more carefully. What if they ask about Earth's stance on the Proxima Centauri dispute? My left shoe feels tighter than my right. Is that alien judging my posture? I wonder if the human race will be remembered as the species that introduced the galaxy to pizza. Vexthera tried to maintain her professional demeanor, but her four eyes had widened noticeably. She attempted to narrow the connection, to focus on a single thought stream, but it was like trying to isolate a single drop in a waterfall. Each time she grasped at one thread of consciousness, it led to 17 others, branching and reconnecting in patterns that defied telepathic convention. "Ambassador," Tavrarik said, noting Vexthera's unusual reaction. "Is everything all right?" "Oh, yes," Jake replied cheerfully. "Just fine." Vexthera's expression suggested otherwise. Her normally obsidian skin had taken on a grayish pallor. One of her hands clutched at the ceremonial sash across her torso. "I am proceeding with the standard evaluation," she managed, though her voice lacked its usual certainty. Inside Jake's mind, Vexthera was now drowning. She tried to focus on his diplomatic knowledge, a safe, professional topic, but even this was a labyrinth. Section 3 of the Non-Proliferation Treaty clearly states, unless it's Section 4, did I mix that up with the Rigelian Accord? No, wait. The Rigelian Accord was the one with that weird clause about cheese. Why did they call it the Rigelian Accord when it was signed on Tau Ceti? Tau Ceti reminds me of that vacation spot on Earth. What was it called? Focus on the treaty, Jake, not your beach trip to Tahiti. Though that sunset was amazing, all orange and purple like the color of Tavrarik's ceremonial sash, which symbolizes. I wonder if they chose that color because their species can see in the ultraviolet. What would ultraviolet even look like? Vexthera staggered slightly. No mind should contain this many simultaneous processes. It violated every principle of cognitive efficiency. Yet the human stood there, smiling pleasantly, apparently unaware of the cognitive hurricane inside his skull. The council chamber was now in visible discomfort. The more telepathically sensitive delegates had begun to pick up echoes of Jake's thought storm through Vexthera's increasingly fragile mental barriers. A Thessalian diplomat was covering all 4 earholes. 2 Danubian observers had retreated to the chamber's periphery. Vexthera made a desperate attempt to terminate the connection gracefully. But in doing so, she accidentally triggered a memory cascade in Jake's mind. The year was 2181. Jake stood in his apartment, staring at an unassembled IKEA hovership shelf unit. The instructions, still printed on physical paper, even in this age, lay before him like an ancient, indecipherable scroll. "Insert tab A into slot B," he muttered, turning the main component over in his hands. "Which one is tab A? They're not labeled. Nothing is labeled. Is this even the right piece? Why does this one have an extra hole? Did they give me the wrong parts?" 3 hours later, Jake sat surrounded by scattered components, fighting back tears of frustration. The shelf unit, partially assembled, listed dangerously to one side. 2 mysterious screws, and what appeared to be an alien Allen wrench, lay unused on the floor, mocking his efforts. "I have 3 advanced degrees," he whispered to the empty apartment. "I am an accredited interstellar diplomat. I negotiated the Tau Ceti fishing rights agreement. I should be able to assemble a simple shelf." The memory shifted, bleeding into another. Jake's mother's face appeared on his communication screen, her expression a familiar blend of affection and gentle reproach. "You promised you'd call last week, Jakey." "I know. Mom, I'm sorry. It's been crazy busy with the Andromeda Summit preparation." "Too busy for your mother? The woman who carried you for 9 months and went through 27 hours of labor?" "Mom, please." "It's fine. I understand. Ambassador Martinez has more important things to do than talk to his old mother. I'll just sit here alone with my memories and my cat." "Mom, that's not fair. Did I tell you Mrs. Goldstein's son calls her twice a week? And he's on a deep space mission to Betelgeuse." The guilt had lingered for weeks, despite 3 subsequent calls, and sending her favorite chocolates via interstellar courier. The memory dissolved into yet another. Jake at university, lying awake at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling. What if diplomatic corps was the wrong choice? Should I have gone into xenobiology instead? Or interstellar law? Am I making a difference? Or just shuffling papers between worlds? What does it all mean? Will humanity ever truly find its place among the stars? Or are we just pretending we belong? What if I'm not cut out for this? What if I'm the wrong person to represent Earth? This existential spiral had lasted until dawn, fueled by 3 espressos and a deadline for his comparative xenopolitics thesis. Vexthera was no longer merely observing these memories. She was experiencing them as if they were her own. The frustration of the furniture assembly, the guilt over neglected familial duties, the crushing weight of existential doubt, all crashed into her consciousness with the force of a supernova. In the council chamber, several delegates had begun to whimper. A Hadrosian representative had curled into a defensive ball, all 6 limbs wrapped around its torso. The psychic echoes were spreading through the room like ripples in a pond. Vexthera, desperate to regain control, attempted to focus on a single, simple thought in Jake's mind. She isolated a question that seemed innocuous. "Are hot dog sandwiches?" It was a mistake. This seemingly trivial query opened a philosophical wormhole in Jake's consciousness. If a sandwich requires 2 separate pieces of bread, then a hot dog on a bun that's connected on one side isn't technically a sandwich. But the hot dog is still meat between bread, which is the essential nature of sandwichness. Then, is a submarine sandwich actually a sandwich if the bread is connected? What about open-faced sandwiches? They're called sandwiches, but they're not even closed. Is structure or function the defining characteristic? If I put sandwich fillings between 2 waffles, is that a sandwich? Or 2 pancakes? What about 2 slices of pizza face to face? Is a taco a sandwich? Is a burrito? What even is a sandwich? This existential sandwich crisis fractured into 1,000 related but distinct philosophical inquiries, each spawning its own web of associated thoughts, memories, and emotions. The hot dog question alone generated enough cognitive activity to power a small city. And then, without warning, The barriers between Jake's mind and the psychic field of the council chamber collapsed entirely. Jake's entire thought stream, from sandwich taxonomies to invasion defense scenarios, from childhood memories to diplomatic protocols, from self-doubt to cosmic wonder, blasted through the room like a telepathic EMP. Council members reeled in psychic shock. Some screamed, others fainted. A few broadcast their own panic in an unintentional psychic feedback loop that only intensified the chaos. A Zeta Reticulan diplomat began reciting the ingredients of Earth breakfast cereals in their native tongue. Two Arcturian observers were locked in a heated debate about whether socks should be folded or rolled for optimal drawer storage. In the center of this psychic maelstrom stood Jake, still smiling pleasantly, completely unaware of the havoc his mind was wreaking. Vexthera's composure finally shattered completely. Her four eyes rolled back, showing only iridescent whites. Her elegant frame went rigid, and then, from deep within her chest, came a sound that would haunt the nightmares of everyone present. A primal, agonized scream that contained echoes of 1,000 trivial human anxieties. The scream cut through the chamber like a knife, silencing the chaos momentarily. And then Vexthera, premier telepath and chief interrogator of the Galactic Council, undefeated in 342 years of service, collapsed unconscious to the polished floor. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Jake, blinking in confusion, looked down at the fallen telepath, then up at the shaken council. He said hesitantly. Is she okay? High Counselor Tavrarik, clutching his ceremonial staff for support, stared at Jake with an expression that mingled terror and awe. The evaluation, he said hoarsely, is complete. Earth's petition for full council membership is granted, immediately, with all rights and privileges.
Oh, Jake brightened. That's fantastic news. Thank you, Counselor. Earth is honored by your—
Please, Tavrarik interrupted, raising a trembling clawed hand. No further statements are necessary. The session is adjourned. Council members were already fleeing the chamber, some moving with dignity, others with considerably less decorum. A medical team rushed in to attend to Vexthera, whose unconscious form was occasionally twitching while mumbling something that sounded suspiciously like, "But is cereal a soup?" Jake stood in the center of the rapidly emptying room, puzzled but pleased by the unexpected diplomatic victory. He made a mental note to report this success back to Earth Command, right after he figured out whether the stain on his left cuff was coffee or the purple juice from breakfast, and after he checked whether the hotel would charge him for a late checkout, and maybe after a quick nap because these council sessions were exhausting, but definitely before calling his mother because it had been too long, and she would give him that disappointed look over the view screen. 3 hours later, Jake sat in the cockpit of his diplomatic shuttle, preparing for departure from Citadel Station. The post-council briefing had been strangely abbreviated, with several alien dignitaries flinching when he entered the room, and others making excuses to maintain a significant distance. "Shuttle Earth 7, you are cleared for immediate departure," came the traffic controller's voice, with a notable emphasis on immediate. "Thank you, Citadel Control," Jake replied cheerfully. "Any messages before I head out?" A pause. "No messages. Ambassador, safe travels. Please, safe travels." As the shuttle pulled away from the station, Jake puzzled over the strange behavior of the council members. Perhaps it was just alien diplomacy he didn't yet understand. He'd have to brush up on his xenocultural studies when he got home. His thoughts drifted to his expense report. Would Earth Command approve the extra night at the hotel? He'd had to stay because of the council session running long. But bureaucracy was bureaucracy, even in the age of interstellar travel. And he'd definitely have to explain the minibar charges. Was 16 credits for a small bag of mixed nuts reasonable by galactic standards? It seemed excessive. But maybe nuts were a luxury item in space. Meanwhile, across the station, an emergency session of the Council's inner circle was underway. It Cannot be natural, insisted Representative Zorn of the Pleiadian Collective, their luminous form pulsing with agitation. No evolved consciousness should contain that much. Chaos. Tavrarik, looking considerably more composed now that the human was departing, nodded gravely. The medical team reports that Vexthera remains unresponsive. When conscious, she alternates between debating the categorical nature of Earth breakfast foods and attempting to assemble imaginary furniture. We must consider the security implications, rumbled Ambassador Krevuk of the Draconis Alliance. If human minds can overwhelm our most skilled telepath, they represent a significant defensive advantage, or a weapon. They may not even be aware of their ability, mused Tavrarik. Ambassador Martinez showed no sign of understanding what had occurred. Which makes them all the more dangerous, Krevuk countered. Unconscious psychic broadcasting is uncontrollable. The Medusan delegate, still visibly shaken, raised a tentacle. I propose an immediate galaxy-wide advisory. All telepathic species should be warned against initiating contact with human minds without severe shielding protocols. The motion passed unanimously. Within hours, a priority communication propagated through the galactic network. Advisory: Contact Protocol Revision. Subject: Human Cognitive Patterns. Classification: Class 7 Cognitive Hazard. All telepathic personnel are hereby advised that human minds have been classified as potentially hazardous to psychic well-being. Direct unshielded contact may result in cognitive overload, memory contamination, philosophical disorientation, obsessive taxonomic disorder, furniture assembly trauma. Standard telepathic protocols are insufficient for human interaction. Specialized training and equipment are required for all future telepathic engagements with human subjects. This advisory is to be implemented immediately across all Council jurisdictions. By order of the High Council, Tavrarik, Acting High Counselor. 3 months passed. Jake Martinez had returned to his apartment on Earth, his successful diplomatic mission resulting in a commendation and a small but welcome pay increase. His life had returned to its comfortable routine: diplomatic briefings, occasional social outings, weekly calls to his mother, and the perpetual battle with his building's climate control system that never seemed to maintain a consistent temperature. He remained completely unaware that, across the galaxy, his species had become simultaneously celebrated as valuable allies and classified as psychic biohazards. On the Citadel, Vexthera was making slow progress in her recovery. The medical wing had created a specialized telepathic isolation chamber where she could heal without external thought patterns interfering with her rehabilitation. Her therapist, Dr. Nalfen, specialized in treating psychic trauma. "How are you feeling today?" the doctor asked, seated at a safe distance outside the isolation field. Vexthera's once pristine obsidian skin had regained some of its luster, but faint gray patches still mottled her face and hands. Her 4 eyes focused with effort on her therapist. "I had the dream again," she said quietly. "The one about the shelving unit." Dr. Nalfen nodded sympathetically. "The IKEA dream?" "Yes. I was trying to attach something called a Björksnäs to a Hemnes using a hex key, but the instructions were written in symbols that changed every time I looked away." She shuddered. "When I finally assembled it, it collapsed and chased me through an endless warehouse of identical furniture." "These are not your memories," Dr. Nalfen reminded her gently. "They belong to the human." "I know," Vexthera whispered. "But they feel like mine. Yesterday, I caught myself wondering whether cereal with milk should be classified as a soup. I've never even eaten cereal." "The contamination is persistent, but diminishing," the doctor assured her. "Your own thought patterns are reasserting themselves. The human cognitive imprint will fade with time." Vexthera wasn't so sure. Sometimes, alone in her isolation chamber, she found herself categorizing things into arbitrary taxonomies. Were chairs with 3 legs still chairs? At what point did a stool become a chair? If you removed one leg from a four-legged chair, was it still a chair or now a stool? What was the essential chairness of a chair? These questions would spiral for hours if she didn't catch herself. "The council has requested an update on your condition," Dr. Nalfen said, changing the subject. "They are concerned about the implications for future human interactions." Vexthera straightened, summoning her professional demeanor. "You may inform the council that while human cognition presents significant challenges, it is not inherently malicious. Their minds are simply differently structured." "Differently structured," the doctor repeated, making notes. "Can you elaborate?" Vexthera considered the question carefully. "Most sentient species develop linear or mildly branching thought patterns. Efficient, organized, hierarchical. Humans appear to have evolved a form of chaotic parallel processing. Multiple simultaneous thought streams with no apparent priority hierarchy. Trivial concerns occupy the same cognitive space as existential questions or critical diplomatic information. And this structure overwhelmed your defenses. It was like..." Vexthera searched for an analogy. "Imagine trying to drink from a garden hose, only to have it suddenly transform into a fire hose, then a waterfall, then an ocean, all while someone throws soup, sand, and philosophical questions into the torrent." Dr. Nalfen blinked his three eyes in sequence, a gesture of deep concern. "Yet, somehow humans function with these minds?" "Not only function, they thrive," Vexthera said with a touch of incredulity. "They navigate this cognitive chaos as naturally as we breathe. I believe it may even be the source of their adaptability and creative problem-solving. Where we see disorder, they find unexpected connections." She paused, then added more quietly, "In a strange way, there's a beauty to it, terrifying, overwhelming beauty." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, humanity's diplomatic standing had improved dramatically. Jake's seemingly miraculous success had opened doors previously closed to Earth representatives. Trade agreements were being finalized at unprecedented rates. Cultural exchange programs were flourishing. Earth was quickly becoming an essential member of the galactic community. There was just one peculiarity. In all these interactions, telepathic species maintained a careful distance from human delegates. Meetings were conducted with humans isolated behind special privacy screens that were, in reality, psychic dampening fields. No one explained this to the humans, who assumed it was simply an alien cultural preference for personal space. On particularly important occasions, specially trained and heavily shielded telepaths might attempt brief, carefully controlled scans of human representatives, and even these professionals emerged from the experience looking shaken, often requesting immediate sabbaticals. Jake himself had been promoted to senior ambassador, with special responsibility for relations with the Galactic Council. His superiors were baffled, but pleased by his inexplicable rapport with alien dignitaries, who seemed to regard him with a mixture of terror and respect that proved remarkably effective in negotiations. "Martinez has a gift," his supervisor remarked during a performance review. "I've never seen the Draconians concede a point so quickly as when Jake approached their delegation." What the supervisor didn't know was that the Draconian representative had received a psychic impression of Jake's approach and immediately broadcast to his colleagues. "Imminent cognitive hazard. Concede immediately." One evening, as Jake prepared for another council meeting, his communication screen chimed with an incoming call from Earth Command. "Ambassador Martinez," said Admiral Winters, her expression serious. "We've received an unusual request from the Council. They're asking if you would consent to a medical procedure." Jake raised his eyebrows. "What kind of procedure?" They weren't specific, but it involves their chief interrogator, Vexthera. Apparently, she's been in recovery since your initial council appearance and has requested to meet with you as part of her rehabilitation. Jake frowned, trying to recall. Vexthera, was she the tall, black-skinned one with 4 eyes? The one who touched my shoulder and then passed out. That's her. The council says she's been experiencing some lingering effects from your encounter. They believe another controlled meeting might help her recovery. Of course I'll help, Jake said immediately. Should I prepare anything? Admiral Winters looked uncomfortable. They've requested that you try to think simple thoughts, whatever that means. Jake blinked. Simple thoughts? Like what? They didn't specify, just said to avoid complex philosophical questions, especially about food classification or furniture assembly. That's oddly specific, Jake said, puzzled. But I'll do my best. 2 days later, Jake stood in a specialized medical chamber on the Citadel. The room was sparsely furnished, just 2 chairs separated by a small table. The walls pulsed faintly, with an energy field he couldn't identify. The door slid open, and Vexthera entered, accompanied by Dr. Nalfen. She moved more cautiously than Jake remembered, her once fluid grace now measured and deliberate. When she saw him, she visibly tensed. Ambassador Martinez, she said formally. Thank you for agreeing to this session. Happy to help, Jake replied cheerfully. Though I'm not sure how. Dr. Nalfen stepped forward. Ambassador, Vexthera experienced a significant psychic trauma during your previous encounter. As part of her healing process, we believe a controlled re-exposure may help her develop the necessary mental defenses. I traumatized her? Jake asked, concerned. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. It was not intentional, Vexthera assured him, carefully taking the seat opposite his, maintaining maximum distance within the small room. Your species simply has unique cognitive patterns. Jake nodded, still confused but willing to help. What should I do? Just sit quietly, the doctor instructed. Vexthera will initiate a momentary contact. Try to focus on something simple and non-branching. Perhaps a color or a basic shape. Right. Simple. Non-branching, Jake repeated, already wondering what that meant exactly, and whether different shapes might be considered more or less complex, and if a circle was simpler than a square, or if that depended on how you define simplicity, and whether... Now, please, Dr. Nalfen said firmly, interrupting Jake's rapidly accelerating thought spiral. Jake took a deep breath and tried to think of a single color. Blue. Just blue. Vexthera extended her hand tentatively across the table, stopping just short of touching Jake's sleeve. She closed her 4 eyes briefly, centering herself, then made contact. Blue. For one blessed moment, there was only blue in Jake's mind. A simple, calming blue. Then, is this the right shade of blue? More of a cobalt or a navy? Blue like the ocean or blue like the sky? Which ocean? Pacific, Atlantic? The sky is only blue because of light scattering. It's not actually. I should have worn my blue tie today instead of the green. Is teal more blue or more green? If blue is a primary color, why are there so many different blues? Vexthera withdrew her hand quickly, but not before experiencing the beginnings of another cascade. She swayed slightly in her chair, but remained conscious. That was... she began, then paused to collect herself. Better. Still intense, but manageable with the dampening field. Dr. Nalfen was monitoring Vexthera's vital signs on a small device. Your psychic readings remained within safe parameters. This is excellent progress. Jake looked between them, bewildered. I don't understand what's happening. Did I do something wrong when we first met? Vexthera and the doctor exchanged glances. Ambassador, Vexthera said carefully. Are you aware that your species has been classified as a Class 7 cognitive hazard? A what? Jake's eyes widened. Your minds operate differently from any other known species, she explained. Where most sentient beings think in organized, linear patterns, humans maintain dozens of simultaneous thought processes with no apparent hierarchy. Simple questions fracture into countless related but distinct inquiries. Memories, emotions, random observations, and critical information all occupy the same cognitive space. That's just thinking, Jake said, confused. Doesn't everyone think that way? No, Vexthera said emphatically. They do not. Your first contact with my mind overwhelmed my telepathic centers completely. I experienced 3 months of what your medical professionals might call acute cognitive contamination. I had dreams about assembling furniture. I debated myself about sandwich definitions. I experienced existential dread about career choices I never made. Jake's mouth fell open.
You could hear all my thoughts?
Not just hear, experience, Vexthera corrected. Your concern about your hotel room temperature became my concern. Your childhood memories became indistinguishable from my own. Your philosophical inquiry about whether hot dogs are sandwiches spawned a taxonomic crisis that spread to 17 council members.
The hot dog question? That's what made you pass out.
Jake couldn't hide his disbelief. The hot dog question was merely the catalyst, Dr. Nalfen interjected. It was the fractal expansion of that question, combined with the already overwhelming parallel processing of your standard thought patterns, that caused the telepathic equivalent of a system overload. Jake sat back in his chair, stunned. So, all this time, the reason for the privacy screens at council meetings, the way telepathic species keep their distance? Protection, Vexthera confirmed. Though I should note that the Council now views humanity's cognitive structure as both a liability and an asset. Your chaotic thinking makes you naturally resistant to telepathic influence and gives you remarkable problem-solving capabilities. Several Council members have suggested that human cognitive patterns might be the next evolutionary leap in sentient thought. Just a very uncomfortable one for telepathic species to interact with. Jake processed this information with a mixture of amazement and embarrassment. His random thoughts about breakfast cereals and IKEA furniture had literally overwhelmed the most powerful telepath in the galaxy. It was hard to know whether to feel proud or mortified. Is there anything I can do to make it easier? He asked. Some way to organize my thoughts better? Vexthera shook her head. That would be asking you to change the fundamental nature of your cognition. Besides, the Council has adapted. Specialized shielding technology has been developed for interactions with humans, and telepaths assigned to human diplomatic missions now undergo rigorous training to handle the cognitive overflow. And your recovery? Jake asked with genuine concern. A slight color change, the equivalent of a blush for her species, spread across Vexthera's obsidian features. Ongoing. Though I must admit, certain aspects of human thinking have been enlightening. Your species' ability to find connections between seemingly unrelated concepts has influenced my own problem-solving methodologies. And there is something liberating about the way humans embrace cognitive chaos, rather than imposing rigid structure. Dr. Nalfen cleared his throat. We should conclude this session. Vexthera has made excellent progress, but prolonged exposure is still not recommended. As Jake prepared to leave, Vexthera raised a hand in the formal council salute. Ambassador Martinez, thank you for your cooperation, and... She hesitated, then added, I believe hot dogs are their own unique category. Neither sandwich nor not sandwich, but occupying a liminal culinary space that defies conventional taxonomy. Jake grinned. You know, I've come to the exact same conclusion. In the months and years that followed, humanity's integration into the galactic community continued to evolve in unexpected ways. Earth was simultaneously celebrated as a valued council member and respected as a Class 7 cognitive hazard. Human diplomats found doors open to them with surprising ease, partly out of genuine appreciation for their unique perspectives, and partly out of a desire to conclude meetings as quickly as possible before psychic shielding batteries depleted. The galaxy adapted to humanity's chaotic minds, just as humans adapted to the myriad physical and cultural differences of alien species. Specialized telepathic translators were developed that could filter and organize human thought patterns into more manageable streams. These devices became standard issue for any telepathic species planning extended contact with humans. Jake Martinez continued his diplomatic career with distinction, eventually becoming Earth's chief ambassador to the Galactic Council. He never fully understood the mixture of awe and wariness with which certain council members regarded him, but he learned to use it to Earth's advantage in negotiations. Vexthera made a complete recovery, though she never quite lost her fascination with human furniture assembly instructions, or her tendency to categorize foods into increasingly specific taxonomies. She became the foremost expert on human telepathic relations and published a seminal work titled The Beautiful Chaos: Understanding and Surviving Human Cognitive Patterns. It became required reading for all telepathic diplomatic personnel. On rare occasions, usually after official functions, where diplomatic protocol had been observed and sufficient psychic shielding maintained, Vexthera and Jake would meet privately for what they came to call controlled exposure therapy. With appropriate safety measures in place, they would discuss simple topics: the weather, cultural differences, recent diplomatic developments, allowing Vexthera to build her tolerance for human thought patterns in small, measured doses. During one such session, 3 years after their disastrous first meeting, Vexthera made an observation that would eventually become famous throughout the council. "Your species' minds," she said thoughtfully, "are like cosmic jazz improvisation among a galaxy of classical musicians, discordant at first hearing, but containing patterns and beauty that the rest of us are only beginning to comprehend." Jake, who had been mentally debating whether cloud patterns on the Citadel's atmospheric dome looked more like a rabbit or a coffee mug, while simultaneously reviewing trade figures and wondering if he'd remembered to pack his favorite socks, simply smiled. "We just call it thinking," he said. "But I like your description better." The galaxy continued to evolve, as galaxies do. New species joined the council. Scientific discoveries reshaped understanding of the universe. Cultural exchanges enriched civilizations across thousands of worlds. And throughout it all, humanity's beautiful chaos, their disorganized, inefficient, wildly creative minds, remained both their most perplexing quality and their greatest strength. A reminder that in a universe that tends toward order, sometimes the most powerful force is a mind that asks, in all seriousness, whether a hot dog should be classified as a sandwich, while simultaneously contemplating the nature of existence and wondering if it's too late to call mom.